Hey everyone, thank you for joining today. My name is Debraj Ghosh. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager for Office 365's Threat Protection Services. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about how we protect your data with end-to-end security in Office 365. This is part of the Tech Summit series that we have, and it's one of the discussions that we've had with several of our customers and several of our partners across the globe throughout our Tech Summit series for this year. And it's something that's obviously top of mind for many of the folks that have been coming to these Tech Summits and coming to sort of see our discussions. Before we get into the actual security aspect and the discussion topics, one of the things we want to really talk about is the top cloud concerns that our customers have. Of course, Office 365 is one of the largest cloud-based services that's offered across the globe. And so as customers migrate to the cloud, there's obviously a few things that are very important to them before they decide to make this journey, or even after they've made the journey. There are a few things that are important to them to make sure that they have made the right choices and they have made the right decisions. And so what we find from our several discussions with different customers and partners across the globe is that there's really three top things that come to the top of everyone's mind when they think about the journey to the cloud or migration to the cloud. And those are security, compliance, and transparency. So as you can see, one of the most important concerns that customers have about that migration to the cloud is actually security, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And then, of course, complacency and transparency sort of go hand in hand with that cloud journey as well, and those are focus areas in some of these other topics that we've covered throughout the Tech Summit series this year. But today, of course, we're going to focus on security, and specifically the security workloads that are available in Office 365. So before we get into the discussion about the workloads, we wanted to highlight some of the things that we see our customers actually feel are important. And the way we sort of break down security and the way we look at security at Microsoft, and you'll see that throughout this discussion, is there's a few different aspects to security. And within Office 365, there's really information protection, and then there's threat protection. Information protection is essentially data leakage and the ability to retain sensitive data and make sure that sensitive data doesn't get into the wrong hands. Whereas threat protection is more about making sure that bad things don't get into your tenant or your organization. And when we talk to customers, what we really see come out in these discussions is that threat protection aspect is something that is really, really concerning to many, many customers. And that's really what we see when we talk to our customers. What are the big challenges that they feel as they migrate to the cloud when it comes to security? Those challenges really seem to lie in that threat protection aspect, where the big things that are concerning to customers are exposure to advanced attacks. So what we have seen throughout for the past several years is that there has been a huge escalation in not only the number of threats, but also in the sophistication of threats that are part of the threat landscape. So the exposure to these advanced attacks is something that is definitely top of mind for most of our customers and also at Microsoft. And this is what you'll see as we talk about some of the workloads that we've created in Office 365, really trying to address the fact that customers are concerned about this exposure to advanced attacks. The next thing that we saw a lot of customers really, really worry about is the inability to detect malicious activity. Even a few months ago to a few years ago, it took almost 145 days on average for malware or some sort of, or any type of malicious activity or any type of malicious aspect in an organization. It took almost 145 days for that to come to light. So basically, that discovery process took on average 145 days. Now that we've advanced several of the tools and several of the ways that organizations can actually determine whether or not there's any type of malicious activity, we've reduced that 145 days to about roughly 90 days on average. However, 90 days is still about 3 months. So ideally, customers want to be able to detect any type of malicious activity as quickly as possible so that they can start addressing how to remediate and how to respond to that activity. And that's really where it leads into the third pillar, which is difficulty in responding to threats quickly. So customers obviously realize that not all threats will be stopped and not all threats will be flagged by their security solutions. So therefore, the ability to both detect and then respond quickly to those threats is also as important as the ability to stop the threats in the first place, because sometimes threats will get through. So customers are very, very concerned about being able to respond to threats quickly so that whatever harm they do is very, very limited in scope, and also the cost of that harm is also limited in scope. So when we talk about security at Microsoft, one of the things that's very, very important is what we call the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph. The Intelligent Security Graph is essentially a pool of information. It's a pool of telemetry, essentially. And so that threat telemetry is something that's harnessed from all of our different platforms at Microsoft. So of course, we have the Azure platform, we have Windows, and then we have Office 365. For example, in Azure, we look at 450 billion authentications every single month. So that login information, if there's malicious logins, we pick that up and we actually understand how that happened. And then that goes into our Intelligent Security Graph as part of the threat telemetry that we have. Within the Windows ecosystem, we have over 1 billion Windows devices across the globe, and those devices actually provide threat telemetry as well. So if any of those devices have been impacted by any threats, that information goes into the Intelligent Security Graph and is then able to be used across all of the Microsoft security workloads. Within Office 365, we look at 400 billion emails every single month and analyze those emails to determine if there's any malicious content in those emails. And so once again, that information, that threat telemetry of those 400 billion emails is also part of the Intelligent Security Graph. So the Intelligent Security Graph really provides us with a lot of signal breadth when it comes to security. And then it also provides integrated intelligence. So what the Intelligent Security Graph enables us to do is share signal between our different platforms. So we have, of course, Office 365 and Windows. Windows and Office 365 actually share their telemetry. So whatever Windows sees, Office 365 actually learns about those threats as well, and vice versa. Similarly, Windows and Azure are now going through that same integration process, and Windows and Azure and Office 365 will also undergo that integration process, so that over the next several months, you'll actually see that all of our platforms are essentially unified in the threat signal that they share. In terms of machine learning and AI, Office 365, Windows, and Azure, they all have capabilities where each of the workloads actually becomes smarter over time. So the more threats they see, the more threats they're able to stop. And not only can they stop the threats they've already seen, from all the information they've gathered over time, they can actually stop threats that are somewhat similar, but not exactly the same to what they've seen as well. So these are actually workloads that are becoming more and more intelligent with each passing day. So how can our systems actually help solve your customer challenges? So we can help by protecting organizations from advanced cyber threats. We can help detect malicious activities, and then we can also respond to threats very, very quickly. And so that's really how we address the customer challenges that our customers have told us about that are top of mind for them. And so that's how we've designed a lot of the systems and a lot of the workloads that we'll talk about today. And we really believe that these are the workloads that can help address and help provide protection, detection, and response capabilities for all of our customers. Now, within Office 365, the built-in capabilities are also very, very important. And as you can see, Office 365 is really built on 4 big pillars, security being the first one. So best-in-class security, where we have over a decade of experience building enterprise software and online services. That is part of Office 365. That goes into everything that we do in Office 365. Privacy by design, with a commitment to use customers' information only to deliver services. So once again, all of your data is safe and stored, and no one else has any access to it. And the only way that data is ever leveraged is by making the services better for you, the customer. Compliance, so commitment to meeting industry standards and delivering a rich set of applications which enable organizational compliance. This is going to be especially true as we have GDPR requirements rolling out later this year. So compliance is a very key aspect, and it's built into every single workload that we talk about at Microsoft, and especially in Office 365. And then transparency in our operations, so you can monitor the state of your service, track issues, and have historical views of availability. So we want to make sure that you actually have complete transparency into everything that's happening within Office 365. All right, so now we're going to move into some of the workloads that we're going to talk about. And before we get into the information protection and the threat protection, we wanted to talk a little bit about SecureScore. SecureScore is essentially a tool that provides you with an assessment of your security profile in your organization. So it really gives you insights into your security position. So it's a one-stop shop to understand your security position and what features you have enabled. It also provides you with guidance to increase your security level. So you can learn what security features are available to reduce risk while helping you balance productivity and security. So SecureScore is really a great product to understand how your organization has its security profile set up and where there might be some gaps or where you may actually be perfect in terms of what you have in terms of your security. So as you can see, this is a Secure Score dashboard, and you can see that there's a score here that's provided. It says 108 out of 364. Now, one of the things that's key about Secure Scores, and we'll see as you actually can look at different aspects of your security profile, Secure Score is not about getting the highest score. It's about getting an optimal score. Ideally, your organization wants to have a security score that it not only enables it to be secure, but also enables your end users to remain productive. Of course, you can actually change your score so that it's actually the highest score possible. However, then you may actually have put in so many different security levers that are on that you may actually make productivity a problem, and you may actually not need that much security. That's why it's very important to hone in on an optimal score rather than trying to get the highest score possible. In the Secure Score tab, you can see where your score is versus the maximum score that's possible for this organization. And the other thing you can see at the very bottom of this page is that there are several different types of actions that can be taken in order to change your score. And we'll actually walk through that in a second. The other thing you see is you have a graph here of how your score maps with industry peers. Now, in this case, it's all of your peers, so not just peers within your domain, but all industry peers combined. One of the things we're working on with Secure Score is eventually you'll be compared with your domain peers. So for example, if you're in the healthcare industry, we will compare your score with other healthcare organizations. If you're in the automotive industry, we'll compare your score with other automotive organizations. That way, when you compare yourself with your actual industry peers, you'll be able to see how your security profile matches with what's going on in industry, and you can actually then tweak it based on what you see and based on what you think you should sort of achieve in terms of your score. What you can see now is we're looking through some of the actions. What we do with Secure Score is we very clearly define what that action is. We also then let you know what kind of category that action is part of. We also let you know what kind of user impact that action may have. We let you know what we think would be the implementation costs, and then also the maximum score you can achieve if you make that change to that specific action. When you drill down and you actually want to learn more, you actually see that we open up another window pane, and there you actually get further, more granular details on what this action will actually do for your organization. So for example, enable MFA for all global admins, what does that change? And then how will that affect your users? And you can see here that it's very, very detailed and it's very deep so that you actually have complete resolution into how changing this action will impact your organization. Now going back to the score, as you alter those changes or you actually make those changes to the actions, you can actually change the score that you have as part of your overall assessment. The other thing that's great about Secure Score is that we will give you a historical tally of how your score has changed or evolved over time, and we also compare that with what's going on within industry. So as you can see in this graph, you actually see your organization's Secure Score, which is the upper graph with the little dots. And then you actually see the industry average. And you can see that you've been changing your score a little bit over time, whereas the industry average has pretty much been a flat line over that same time. Now you can see, once again, you can get granular details on all the different actions and how those actions will impact your score. As you can see here, some of the scores, it gives you a tally of what is the total maximum score you can get from taking that action, and it actually shows you where your score is for that particular action as well. Okay, so now we're going to move into more of the information protection piece. So Secure Score was a great way for you to get an assessment of your security profile for the organization. And now we actually start looking at the information protection pieces that make up Office 365 security. So what we're looking at is data loss prevention. So here we can detect, protect, and monitor your sensitive information. So once again, it's really about detecting, protecting, and then also having the ability to respond and monitor your security when it comes to data loss prevention. So in terms of detection, we can easily create policies that find sensitive content wherever it lies in your Office 365 tenant. We can help you protect by stopping accidental sharing and also educating your end users with tips. We can then also help you monitor and get visibility into your data and how it's being protected. Now, what's great about our DLP service is that everything that we suggest in terms of your DLP policies is actually based on your particular tenant's usage. So it's not basically DLP policies that are just standard. It's actually DLP policies that are based on what your organization really needs. And that's why usage-driven recommendations is a key way of creating the policies that are most important for your organization. And with these usage-driven recommendations, they're very quick to enable, and they offer this additional protection. They provide system insights based on actual organizational data use. They're very, very simple, and it's a very, very simple step-by-step activation in terms of the workflows. And it provides deep content analysis using most common sensitive types. And as you can see there, we're showing you some of the different types of data that's stored within a certain workload. And we actually have some predefined DLP policies depending on what kind of industry you're in. So it's very simple to actually set up the policy, and it's very, very clear as to how this policy will actually work and how it will impact your organization. The other thing that's very, very important with our DLP policies is you want to be able to balance that productivity with the risk that you're also trying to manage. So basically, we have policy tips that help educate users when they are about to violate a policy. So here you can actually see underneath Alex Lee, it actually says, why is this policy in place? And it also lets them know that this is why you can't share this data. This is why this data is locked from sharing. Also, all of these policies and all of these different DLP capabilities are actually available across all different types of devices. So they're available on desktops, they're available on the web, as well as on mobile apps. The final real key piece for the DLP is that it also offers insights and alerts. So basically, you want to be able to have management and oversight over your DLP policies as an admin. With DLP insights and alerts, you get an operational view into your protection controls. You get to be able to view into policy applications and how it impacts across Office 365 deployment. So you know the policies, the rules, the false positives, any types of override actions, and also the incident level views. All of that is available in our the monitoring capabilities for DLP. It also provides proactive notifications if there's any policy violations. You're actually seeing an alert there from a policy that was broken or which caused the trigger for the alert. And you get cross-scenario aggregation of signals for more actionable insights. So once again, really proactive, insightful information that enables you to set up the right DLP policies and manage those policies over time. Now, as we continue on thinking about information protection, another key piece of that information protection is Office 365 message encryption. With Office 365 message encryption, or OME, we are able to protect. So we can protect your data by mitigating the risk of unintended disclosure through encryption and rights protection. We can help control your data by leveraging automatic policies or ad hoc end-user controls for emails shared with anyone. And everything that we do is within the compliance boundaries of any regulations that we have to meet. So we meet obligations that require encrypting the data. Also, what's great about OME is, once again, it's offered in all different form factors in terms of devices. So you can get it on your desktop, you can get it on your tablets, you can get it on your smartphones. So OME is available for all different types of devices, and it's very, very flexible and easy to use. So let's look through an example of OME. Here you're actually looking at the Outlook client, and you see that there's an email that's about to be sent out, which is a loan application information, and you can see that there's an attachment as well as the body of the email. Within the Outlook client, you actually have the Permissions tab. So if you go to the Permissions tab, you can actually choose different types of encryption rights that you can set for this email. In this case, we're going to set Do Not Forward. And as you can see, once you set that as the permission, you actually get a note that says Do Not Forward means you can't copy, you can't send this to anyone else aside from the folks on this list. And all those rights are actually managed by the initial sender. So in this case, the initial sender is Sala, and Sala is the one who's controlling the rights for this email. And now, what's also great about OME, and we'll show that in a second, is that whatever permissions you set for the email, those same permissions are carried into the attachment. So you can see that there's a loan application that's attached into this email. That loan application also has the same exact permissions as the email itself. Now, what's also very, very important is that, of course, Outlook is not the only email client. There's several different ones. We're going to use the example of Google and Gmail specifically, which is, of course, another very well-known and very highly used email client as well. So in this case, we actually see that Sala's email has now landed in Mia's Gmail. In order for us to continue validating and making sure that this is in fact Mia, she has to sign into her Gmail account to make sure that in order to view this message. So that's one layer of security, so we know that it's in fact Mia who's actually looking at the message. And now you can see that the message has been opened, and you can even see in the Gmail client, it actually says that these are the permissions. It says do not forward. So Mia knows that it's a rights protected email. When she opens the loan form, she actually sees that also the loan form itself has the same permissions as the email body. So she can't forward this, she can't copy this, she can't print this out. So the loan application itself has the same exact permissions as the email. And now when she's going to resend to Sala, all those permissions that Sala had put into place are also going to be part of the return email that Mia sends back to Sala. All right, so now we really covered the deep aspects of information protection within Office 365. Now we're going to move over to that other half of security, which is the threat protection piece. So Office 365 ATP is specifically designed to protect your organization in Office 365 from today's most advanced threats. So things like 0 days, targeted phishing campaigns, and really the most advanced malware is actually what ATP is designed to catch. And ATP is not just limited in scope in email, even though that's what the example that we're going to walk through is. It actually protects your entire Office 365 ecosystem. That includes your collaboration workloads like SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams, as well as the Office desktop clients such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Visio. So ATP is really holistic, and it really protects every aspect of Office 365 from today's most advanced threats. So what are the things that go into ATP? So there's time-of-click protection against malicious URLs. So we do URL reputation checks along with detonation of attachments at destination URLs. We provide 0-day protection against malicious attachments. So attachments with unknown virus signatures are assessed using behavioral analysis. We provide critical insights into external threats. So there's rich reporting and tracking features that are provided, and those provide those critical insights into the targets and categories of attacks. They're integrated across apps and services. So as I mentioned, it's protected against over Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Office apps, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint. There's also intelligence sharing with devices. So there's deep integration with Windows Defender ATP. We had alluded to the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph earlier, and that's really manifest in this Office 365 ATP service, which is fully integrated with Windows Defender ATP and Windows Advanced Threat Protection to correlate data across those devices and also across your Office 365 ecosystem. So we're going to actually look at the admin experience first with Office 365's ATP. And as you can see, that we're looking at the admin portal where we're going to set up two of the big policies within ATP. So ATP has safe attachments and safe links. Attachments, of course, is looking at different types of attachments and making sure that attachments are blocked if they're malicious. So we look at the safe attachments policy. Right now it says block. We're going to go into the policy. We're going to name the policy. In this case, we've called it safe attachments policy, and it says block. And now we actually see we have several different options. And now when we drill into the actual policy, we see we have several different options. We have an off, we have monitor, we have block, and we have replace. We're going to choose replace. So we're going to block the attachment with the advanced malware and still let the attachment get through. So we're basically going to replace the attachment with a dummy attachment, which is not malicious, but we're going to let the body of the email go through. We're going to enable a redirect so that the admin will have access to the email and be able to see the email. And we're going to apply it to a set of folks. Now we've set up the safe attachment policy. Now let's look at the safe links policy. So safe links is designed to catch and flag any type of malicious link at the time of click. And so here we see the safe links policy. We can turn it on and off. We're going to set it to on, of course. We're going to then also make sure that no one can click through to the URL if we find it to be malicious. So now we've set our safe attachments and our safe links policy. Let's see what the end user experience would look like. So now we're actually in the Office 365 online Outlook client, and we're now looking at an email that was sent by Sarah Davis, and we're going to actually look at the email that was bad. In this case, we see an email that was received, and it was sent to Alex Darrow, and we can see that there's been an attachment, and the attachment has been blocked. And so Alex sent an attachment. It was blocked by safe attachments in ATP. If I click on that attachment, I actually get a warning that says, hey, this attachment has been blocked because we found it to be malicious. That's ATP's safe attachments blocking an attachment after it's been verified and found to be malicious. So now what you see here is that in this case, a malicious attachment was sent. ATP's safe attachments actually blocks that attachment and make sure that no one can be harmed by that malicious attachment. When it comes to safe links, now we're looking at an email that has two different links. You can see the word site is one of the links, and you can see Bing is one of the links. So in this case, if someone clicks on the word site, at the time of click, we will assess to determine whether or not that site is malicious, and we will block you from accessing that site if we find out that that site is malicious. So as you can see, this is the block scenario where we block that page from being accessed. Similarly, if you click on a site that's a good site, in this case Bing, if we click on Bing here, you can access Bing because once again, we've actually checked it out and we know that Bing is not a bad site, so now you can actually access Bing. So in that same email, you have two different pointers, one to a bad site, one to a good site. You're obviously able to access the good site, which is bing.com, but the bad site was blocked so that you don't go to a site that can actually maybe impact you in a negative way. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears and talk a little bit about Office 365 Threat Intelligence. Threat Intelligence really is designed to provide you with broad visibility into the attack trends. It uses billions of data points for its signal from Office, Windows, and Azure. It integrates that data from external cyber threat hunters. It provides proactive security and policy management, and it leverages several intuitive dashboards that have drill down capabilities so you can really understand all the different activities that are going on inside your tenant. One of the key aspects of threat intelligence is that proactive piece and that ability to help not only stop threats and respond to threats, but actually really prevent threats. And with that in mind, we actually just released a feature called Attack Simulator. Attack Simulator really does that. It enables you to simulate different types of threat attacks on your end users and then determine how they behave and understand how they react when they're under attack so that you can then help set up those policies to help those users or educate those users when they are under attack on how they should behave in the future when there is a real attack in place. So Attack Simulator is a great tool to help educate and be more proactive in how you set up your policies so you can actually prevent any bad effect from an attack. Now, what's great about Attack Simulator is since it sits within the Threat Intelligence service, with Threat Intelligence, as you can see in this dashboard, at the very bottom, it actually lets you know who are the top targeted users in your organization. So if you can imagine, you have the top targeted users with Threat Intelligence, so you know who those users are, and then you have a service like Attack Simulator where you can actually simulate attacks and send attacks at folks. You can actually send those attacks, those simulated attacks, at the people who are most targeted because in most cases, the people who are most targeted, who have the most volume of malware sent to them, are probably the ones who are most likely to be compromised. So if you can actually train those people with Attack Simulator and let them know that, hey, this is how you should behave or this is how you should react when you are under attack next time, you can actually reduce that risk that they face from being compromised. And if you can reduce the risk of your top targeted users, you can effectively reduce the risk for your entire organization. Now, let's look very closely at the Threat Intelligence dashboard. You can see that in this dashboard, you have several different features. You actually can look at the different attacks that are happening. You can actually sort of get some pointers on some of the attack trends that we're seeing. You actually see here the weekly attack trends. You actually see the different malware families that are impacting your organization. We actually highlight some of the biggest attack trends in some of the articles that we want to feature because those are top of mind discussions going on within the threat landscape. You actually get a view of the malware trends as well, and also a dashboard that shows you all the significant alerts that have popped up. Now, when we drill down into threat intelligence and we look at the Threat Explorer, now we are actually looking at all the different threat families that are impacting your organization. You can see, once again, those are the top targeted users as well as the top threats over that period of time. Now, in this case, I think we're looking at about a week. So over that week, we're actually identifying the top threats as well as the top targeted users over that week. We have several different filtering options with threat intelligence. In this case, we'll filter by date. And as you can see now, we can actually get into a more granular set of data because we're now actually looking at a shorter time interval. When you go back, you can also drill by threat family. So in this case, we're looking at the different threat families. We highlight the JS Nemukad threat family. And now what you actually see is when you can actually filter by threat family, you can actually see a story develop. In this case, you actually see at the beginning of this month or this week, this Nemukad family of threats was not impacting the tenant. And then all of a sudden, very recently, there's been a huge spike. So over the last few days, all of a sudden now we're seeing a lot of Nemukad. And in order for us to find out more, we can actually look at the top threats. We see that since it's only Nemukad that we're looking at, we see the Nemukad family. We can actually double click on the Nemukad family, and that'll actually open up another window pane that has more advanced analysis. Now you're looking at a message trace of all the different messages that carried that malware. If I look under technical details, I actually see here that I can actually access a white paper This is a white paper that's written by our Microsoft threat analysts, and in this white paper, we actually get a lot more information on the Loki family, which is the malware that's part of Nemucod. These white papers are very, very detailed. They take it down to even lines of code. They'll actually show you the types of email that oftentimes will be associated with this malware. Very, very detailed stuff and giving you a lot of information on a specific threat family. Now, another powerful feature of Office 365's threat intelligence is the ability to remediate. So remember, we talked about being able to be more proactive with your cybersecurity. Office 365 threat intelligence actually allows you to remediate emails that your organization feels might be malicious. So in this case, it could be an email that Microsoft did not find malicious, but in your case, since you've educated your end users, they may say, hey, look, I thought this was malicious. I'm going to send it to my admin, and I'll let the admin investigate this. So in that scenario, let's go to my email. I see here that there's an email that was sent to me by Megan Bowen. There's an attachment, and it just says open the attachment. I'm an end user. I don't know who Megan Bowen is. I've never received any email from her. And it's, to me, a little bit strange that I'm getting an email from her with an attachment. So I'm going to send it to my admin. I'm going to have my admin look at it. And with the threat intelligence tool, it's very, very simple for an admin to look up an email and then run an investigation and sort of take actions to remediate that email and determine what to do with it. So now I'm back at the Threat Explorer. Now basically my end user has sent me this email. I'm an admin now, so I'm going to look up emails that were sent by Megan Bowen. I can do that because the filtering is very simple in the Threat Explorer. So I filter out, and I now am going to look for all emails that were sent by Megan Bowen. I filter it out, and now I'm looking at these 4 emails that were sent to me by Megan Bowen. I'm going to now create an investigation. So I'm going to choose one of those emails. I'm going to create an incident report. I go through this process. I name the incident. I'll give it a severity level. In this case, the severity level will be high. Now I've created the scope of the incident, which is essentially that one email from Megan Bowen, and now I've created that incident report. Now what I can do is I can go into the threat, I can leave the Threat Explorer, I can go into incidents, and now I see that there's an entire set of incidents that I've created working through the Threat Explorer. At the very top is that first email, the one that I just created, suspicious email, and there you see it. Once I drill down, there's that email from Megan Bowen. I'm going to now look at it a little bit more closely. And when I see that email, I have several different action buttons that I can choose. I can delete the attachment, I can keep it in the inbox, or I can move it to junk. In this case, I saw that it looked like it was a suspicious email. I'm going to delete and move the email to junk. And as you can see there, the action is queued. It's, then it runs, and then now it's completed. So now we're going to look at the last piece of the threat protection story. Office 365 Cloud App Security is essentially a CASB service that's part of Office 365. Cloud App Security actually enables threat detection, so you can identify high risk and abnormal usage, security incidents, and threats. It provides enhanced control, so you can shape your Office 365 environment with granular security controls and policies. And you can discover insights. So basically, you can gain enhanced visibility and context into your Office 365 usage and shadow IT. So here we're looking at several of the different alerts and policies that are set up for Office 365's Cloud App Security. So now you're looking at all the different policies that are part of this Office 365 Cloud App Security service. These have been pre-populated and preset, and you can actually see that they have different categories. They have clear definitions as to what each of them are. Now what I'm looking at is some of the alerts that I have set up, and I can see that here there's some alerts that are showing up. So there's basically a general anomaly detection. And I can see that in this case, the alert is set to high, and it also gives me some other granularity into what the alert is. Here I'm looking down into the first one, which is the general anomaly detection. I'm looking at the user who triggered the alert. It's giving me a full description of what that alert is. And as you can see at the bottom, the activity log actually gives you a full detailed scope of what actually occurred before this alert was triggered. So I'm actually looking at all the different actions that took place and all the different sequences of those actions that took place as this alert was triggered. And this is going to really help me identify the sequence of events that occurred and why this alert was triggered and why this behavior is anomalous. Once again, I'm looking at the activity log here. And now, when I go back, I'm actually going to now set up a policy so you can actually see how I set up a Cloud App Security policy, which will provide me with all those different alerts that I just saw. So basically, when I set up the policy, I can be very granular. I can actually determine what will trigger an alert. So basically, that alert that I just saw is based off a policy that was already created. So you can see that there's a few different policies. You can create an activity policy, or you can actually create an anomalous detection policy. In this case, we're going to create an activity policy. You can see that there's the policy. Those are all the different cells that have to be filled out as you set up the policy. And you can see here that there's several different policy templates that I can choose from. And depending on what template I have, some of it will be pre-populated. And if it's no template, then I actually go in and put in all the different alert triggers. As you can see, I just chose an activity policy. I gave the policy a name, and I give it a description. And then I can also choose what kind of severity level I want for the policy. I can give it a category, so in this case, it'll be a threat detection policy. And then I can actually apply different filters, and those filters are what enable me to know what will trigger this as an alert. So now I'm looking through the different filter and then the parameters that will need to be going through in order for me to actually have an alert that's triggered. And now I'm actually choosing if I want it to be a user alert or if it's an alert based on my cloud ecosystem. One of the things that is true for all CASBs is that CASBs actually monitor anomalous behavior of users or any anomalous behavior within your app's ecosystem. So that's why you're actually seeing here, is this going to be an alert for user activity, or is this going to be an alert for user or anything that's happening in the app ecosystem? In this case, it's set to user. And now I go through the different alert triggers, and I can actually set different threshold values. And those threshold values will be the values that are required in order for that alert to be triggered. And then I can also enter any email address that I want where that alert will be sent, so that someone is notified that, hey, there was some suspicious behavior that occurred, and that's the alert that you're going to get at this email address. And then, of course, the governance, in this case, is in the Office 365 ecosystem. And there you have it. So that's essentially the end-to-end security story for Office 365. And what you saw today was essentially Secure Score, which is really an evaluation tool, lets you know how well your organization is shaped for its security. And then we talked a little bit about information protection workloads. So that included our DLP service as well as OME. So essentially, how do you prevent data leakage from happening? How do you make sure that your sensitive data is protected? Then we shifted gears and looked at threat protection services, and that included Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, which really looks at at today's most advanced threats and helps protect your entire Office 365 ecosystem, from email to collaboration workloads to the Office clients. We looked at threat intelligence, and threat intelligence really gives you broad visibility into your entire threat landscape, provides you with those rich insights so that you can make the right decisions, and then finally helps you be more proactive so that you can actually help prevent threats from actually impacting your organization before they really even happen. And then finally, we looked at Office 365 Cloud App Security, which really is our CASB service to enable you to understand if there's any anomalous behavior amongst your users or any anomalous behavior in your app's ecosystem. So it really helps protect you when there's any threats that are happening, and it lets you detect those threats, and then it lets you take actions based on insights that are provided. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you at the next Tech Summit.